Environmental offsets are actions that provide environmental benefits which counterbalance the significant residual environmental impact or risk of a project or activity. Western Australia formally released their environmental offset policy in 2011. The Western Australian Environmental Offset Framework comprises the Environmental Offset Policy, Guidelines and Register. In Western Australia, biodiversity offsets are applied to projects subject to environmental impact assessment of significant proposals and as a condition of permit for clearing of native vegetation under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. There are three types of environmental offsets in Western Australia: land acquisition, on-ground management and research projects. Some of the strategic use of offsets we have identified include the Pilbara Environmental Offset Fund, which is an ongoing program that invests in strategic conservation projects in the Pilbara bioregion to improve native vegetation and species habitats impacted by development. It receives payment from proponents to offset their development impacts. It was created to help manage the cumulative impact of minimizing development on biodiversity in the Pilbara. The fund was set up to overcome these challenges by enabling the government to work with the mining industry and traditional owners to broker land access and deliver enduring positive outcome across the land. Another strategic use of environmental offsetting is the funding of restoration grants. In South Australia, offsets funding is reinvested through grants to protect and restore vegetation. Money is paid to the Native Vegetation Fund by people who have cleared native vegetations. This money is made available through significant environmental benefit grants to restore vegetation or protect native vegetation. In WA, some clearing permits require the applicants to contribute to an environmental offset fund. To this date, this fund has preliminarily been used to acquire more land for conservation. According to the biodiversity offsetting policy, they have their own offsetting register since 2013, and this register contains all the information regarding to the offsets done in Western Australia. And another advantage is that offsets can be considered for applications for legislations other than Environmental Protection Act, such as Planning and Development Act and 1978 Mining Act. And the final objective of this offsetting is to gain net environmental gain by counterbalancing the impacts.
Drawbacks, issues and duplication and competition. Concern was raised about the potential to have two sets of offsets applied when a proposal being assessed by the Environment Protection Act also requires assessment by the Commonwealth Government under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. It is also possible that the two assessment processes could arrive at different conclusions about the need for offsets. Assessment under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act usually has different triggers and could therefore require offsets for different impacts. 1. Uncertainty over the compliance with conditions. In Western Australia, non-compliance with approval conditions was a significant issue as a study conducted in 2017 in Western Australia shows 19% of post-offsets demonstrated no evidence of implementation due to insufficient reporting or difficulty in locating information on regulatory agency files or other public sources. Conditions and reporting that do not measure ecological outcomes. Many offsets were compliant with their approval conditions and yet did not demonstrate an outcome. Meeting regulatory requirements was not sufficient to ensure replacement of ecological function. Approval conditions must be measurable and legally enforceable. Conversely, desired outcome may be difficult to translate in measurable and enforceable conditions that allow a determination of whether performance criteria has been met. Legality of offsets. There is no legal framework to support the use of environment impact assessment in Western Australia. The process to gain approval to clear native vegetation done under Part 5 of the Environment Protection Act, whereas environmental impact assessment is done in Part 4 of the Environment Protection Act, which does not have similar clause. To overcome this issue, offset packages included ministerial approval as part of the formal legal binding. This is a written statement issued by minister which include environmental condition to apply to the project. These conditions can only be set on the proponent and only apply to the project site as defined through the assessment process. This can create issues to two types of offsets: offsets that are like for like replacement for loss of ecosystems.
One way of addressing this issue is having a biobanking process in place, which are identification or creation of natural areas that are protected against future developments. This can be drawn in to compensate other habitats lost as part of development. In Western Australia, policy and legal framework for these approaches does not exist.
Another weakness is the need for a strategic approach during offsetting as a part of the EIA. In Western Australia, offsets are set by case basis, so this can lead to less than optimal outcome. So we can minimize this by using a set of approaches. One is, for an example, if an agency responsible for biodiversity conservation has their own formal biobanking system, then they can identify the sites with highest conservation way before individual impact assessment is being done. And another strategic approach is through strategic impact assessment.
Considering offset earlier in their EIA assessment. Environment impact assessment is introduced in the last stage of the mitigation hierarchy. However, if offset are introduced early on EIA, it can facilitate a more timely resolution to any issues surrounding the offsets. Also, it may result some issues, such as proponents may choose for economic to purpose offset in the place of a full consideration of avoiding and reducing impacts. According to the research conducted by School of Plant Biology, University of Western Australia in 2017 and 18, past and present offset projects in Western Australia were examined. The study shows that in overall only 39% of past offset demonstrate an outcome, while the remainder other demonstrate no outcome or outcome was unknown.